The story begins with the visibly frightened young man who had somehow gone back in time to before his college entrance exams. He now found himself in Ansheng High School within the kingdom of Xia, still struggling to understand what was happening. Everything felt far too strange, and he couldn't tell what kind of horror story he had fallen into. In truth, he had been reincarnated, but with terrible luck, for he had returned to a time long before entering university. Since ancient times, humanity on the planet Blue Star had suffered from constant catastrophes. These disasters originated from what was known as the Secret Realm, a place connected to another world, inhabited by terrifying monsters. Occasionally, these monsters crossed through rifts and invaded the human world. When a powerful monster appeared, it could destroy entire nations and threaten civilization as a whole. To protect themselves, humans developed the Beast Gene System. This system involved injecting monster genes into the body, thereby awakening a beast model and unlocking unique genetic talents. Only those who had awakened such powers could fight back against these threats and protect humanity. Because of this, warriors became highly respected figures, enjoying privileges far beyond those of ordinary citizens. All of Blue Star society began to revolve around martial power. Martial cultivation became the highest priority. Everything else was deemed inferior. At that moment, the young man discovered that his new name was Yi He, and that he was merely a high school student. Things didn't start off well for him. As soon as he arrived in that world, he became the target of his classmates' jokes. It didn't take long for him to realize that the former owner of that body hadn't been well liked. He also learned that the original Yi He's parents had been in an accident, causing the boy to lose focus both in his studies and in his training. Now, the new Yi He would have to suffer the consequences of that. The class teacher announced that everyone was about to receive their genetic modification serum. They had trained for 3 years for this moment, and those who had taken it seriously would be rewarded. Yi He thought that since it was him in that body now, he should do everything right and try to fix the mistakes left behind. Inside the gene injection hall, there were numerous capsules containing the awakening serum, a liquid infused with the primitive genes of magical beasts recorded by human warriors. One by one, students began injecting themselves with the serum. The process was painful, and many of them cried out in agony as their bodies were exposed to that strange energy. Yi He noticed this, but chose to ignore it and injected the serum into himself as well. The teacher was surprised. It seemed like nothing had visibly changed in him. A short-haired girl began mocking him, clearly amused that he hadn't awakened anything. Her name was Wang Xing, and she seemed to enjoy provoking others. Yi He, now reincarnated, was already irritated by how loud and insistent she was. It was then that he began to feel something different. A powerful energy started coursing through his body. His eyes gleamed. He realized that if he didn't seize the moment now, it might be too late. Suddenly, a burst of energy erupted from him, sending Wang Xing flying backward. All the students were stunned. Yi He had awakened an A-rank model called Mad Flame Demola, an infinite-type beast. The impact was so intense that Wang Xing fainted just from the pressure of the energy he released. Several students were knocked to the floor. Others bowed under the overwhelming force he had displayed. Yi He, confused and embarrassed, tried to apologize. He hadn't meant to cause that. Soon after, a notice arrived for all third-year students who had awakened. They were to go to the testing building, where their beast genes and martial levels would be analyzed. There was a special device in that building designed to detect genetic advancement, identify the magical beast gene, and measure each individual's strength. While waiting his turn, Yi He observed the beasts awakened by his classmates. Most were classified around the 3rd or 4th stage. He started wondering why his had been labeled A rank. Soon, he learned that his model was Class 7, Grade 3, which confused him even more. He didn't know if that was good or just excessive. All his classmates were eager to see Yi He's results, and as he noticed their stares, he finally understood that this world truly revolved entirely around martial power. When his data was displayed, it only showed basic information. His level was listed as Class 7, Stage 3, which greatly disappointed everyone. As soon as they saw it, many began to laugh, saying even a baby could beat him easily. Just as Yi He suspected, the system hadn't properly detected his monster model, but that triggered a hidden prompt. It revealed that his monster model was of the infinite type, meaning it could evolve by completing specific missions. This classification didn't follow normal standards. The reincarnated Yi He began to believe that if he fulfilled the right conditions, he could draw new monster models infinitely. That possibility made him think he could one day become a kind of monster king, accumulating power like no one else ever had. With that idea in mind, he decided to talk to his teacher. He wanted to ask for time to study at home since he needed to reinforce his foundations. The teacher didn't believe he could achieve much that way. After all, everyone knew that to become a true warrior, one had to attend college. Even so, Yi He insisted and showed genuine determination. He explained that he had awakened a powerful bloodline and only needed constant training to succeed. His eyes shone with sincerity. The teacher, however, remained skeptical. He thought Yi He would just end up repeating the year, but still allowed him to study from home. Yi He's parents' house house had been mortgaged for 600,000, but thanks to accident compensation exceeding 1 million, he now had a decent starting capital. He realized he had two options to increase his power. The first was to follow the path of the warrior, and the second was to invest in his contract with the Demola model. Knowing that most models started with only one compatibility point, he was surprised that Demola had three. He believed the model had absorbed part of the power from the awakening serum, which explained the extra points. This proved that genetic serums could directly enhance a model's abilities. From that, he concluded that instead of exhausting himself with endless physical training, it might be more efficient to invest money to strengthen his bond with the monster. Determined, he went to the Warrior Center to buy a genetic enhancement serum. But upon arriving, he found himself surrounded by people radiating powerful auras, which intimidated him slightly. He imagined that many of them had already awakened rare and powerful bloodlines. Thanks to Demola, Yi had developed a special sensitivity ability. He could now sense the life signals of creatures around him through the magnetic fields emitted by their bodies. It was as if he could see the flow of chi and blood within the warriors. A desire to fight began to stir within him. Demola, the king of goddesses, in its world had awakened, destined to conquer all forms of life on this planet. While lost in these thoughts, a beautiful girl suddenly appeared, catching his attention. She thought Yi was spying on others, but he wasn't doing anything like that. She commented that it was normal to act strange after awakening a monster gene and asked what had brought him to the Warrior Center. Yi replied that he was there to buy genetic medicine. The girl then began explaining several things. She said that genetic medicine was extremely expensive and could cause resistance if used carelessly. That's why warriors usually waited until their bloodlines reached their limits before using such resources. At that moment, Yi only wanted to know if he could get a discount. The girl handed him a recommendation card. She was a 4th-level martial artist named Hwanghae Lee. With her endorsement, she was already a veteran. He could receive a good discount on his purchases. He thanked her and went straight to make his purchases. In the end, the costs were absurdly high. Yi's compatibility had increased from 3 to 7%. His body became noticeably stronger as a result. However, he realized that as his physique improved, it became increasingly difficult to activate basic mutations. Even so, he was excited. What would normally take a common warrior 3 years to achieve, he accomplished in just a few minutes. This rapid progress thrilled the reincarnated youth, but also made him reflect. Although it seemed like cheating, it was a weak form of cheating, not enough to surpass the true geniuses of that world. He knew he would have to keep evolving if he wanted to be the top scorer on the exam. The rifts of the secret realm were ranked by level, going up to the most dangerous categories, Class S and Class E. These were the highest levels, inhabited by beasts so powerful they could not be controlled by humans. If one of these creatures escaped into the real world, it would trigger an apocalyptic disaster. With the teacher's permission, Yi decided to buy a ticket to enter a Level 3 secret realm rift. There, his journey toward becoming the king of beasts would begin. Upon arriving, he looked up at the sky and saw 3 stars, Kanglan, Anhui, and Taijin. He had read about them in books, but seeing them live was a completely different experience. He was awed by the starry sky. While admiring the heavens, a first-level beast appeared, a red blade-to-fang rabbit. The creature tried to attack, but Yi had already sensed its presence and defeated it with ease, grabbing it with his hand and finishing it in seconds. After the victory, he obtained a magical core, which could be sold for some money. However, he knew that first-level monster cores were not very valuable and wouldn't help him evolve further. Suddenly, a much more dangerous creature appeared, a demon corpse insect, a second-ranked beast. The fight became interesting. With his sword in hand, he faced the giant monster, using combat techniques he had learned from studying the Monster Encyclopedia. He concentrated his energy and unleashed a powerful martial technique, akin to a lightning-like energy strike, hitting the enemy hard. The monster retaliated, firing projectiles from its jaws. Yi barely dodged, but was irritated to find that his clothes were almost torn. Feeling the pressure, he activated Demola's demonic bloodline, charging straight into the creature's mouth and destroying it from within, tearing it apart with his sharp claws. Despite the victory, his sword was corroded by the monster's poison, rendering it useless. To make matters worse, he felt hungry and hadn't brought food. Guided by an irresistible scent, he decided to swallow the magical core of the demon corpse insect. To his surprise, his compatibility increased. This excited him. He had spent a fortune on genetic potions, but swallowing a monster core gave him more results than all that money. Realizing this, he felt slightly frustrated at having wasted his funds. With this new strategy in mind, he activated his life field to locate more monsters. By the next afternoon, Yiha had grown even stronger. His compatibility had risen risen to 9%, but he also discovered that white magical cores no longer contributed to his evolution, so he decided to sell the white and green cores he had accumulated. The buyer was astonished that a mere high school student could gather so many cores in such a short time. Now only 9 days remained until the college entrance exam. In the fourth realm of Ansheng, specifically in Class D, a group of people gathered with one goal: to complete the Bloodjade Flower mission. The team captain was named Lin He. Yi He was also present, but under a false identity. He introduced himself as Dadsla, a strange name he had created with the help of a legal agency, since as a student, he was not allowed to enter a Class D realm. The others found his name odd but ignored it. Lin He, as the leader, didn't fully trust the new member's abilities. Still, he allowed him to join the team to observe and learn during the mission. With everything ready, the group set off toward the location where the Blood Jade Flower could be found. During the journey, while inside a vehicle, enemies appeared on the path. Several Earth Demon rats began chasing them. A team member named Hood took charge, throwing his explosive blades to fight off the monsters surrounding them. Throughout the journey, Yi He, still going by Dadsla, merely observed. He paid attention to every detail, absorbing as much information as possible about monsters, strategies, and teamwork. Shortly afterward, the group decided to proceed on foot, as the Oasis monsters were extremely sensitive to sound. The engine noise could alert them and cause problems. Lin He assigned roles to the team members, but for Dadsla, the order was simply to observe. He was to remain silent and uninvolved, as he was officially still a novice. To lure the monsters, the group used a special stun grenade. This grenade released pheromones from high-level monsters, making the animals feel their territory was being invaded. The trap worked. A second-rank Earth Dragon quickly emerged from the forest, furious. A bald man named Huo Peng observed from afar, eager to see the fight. When the group managed to bring down the Earth Dragon, Lin He decided they should keep advancing. However, the dragon, though severely wounded, still had enough strength to set up an ambush for the captain. Seeing the danger, Yi He acted immediately. He leaped and unleashed a powerful energy attack toward the monster, similar to a concentrated lightning strike. The energy struck the dragon directly, protecting the captain and eliminating the threat. Everyone was surprised. No one expected a novice to be capable of such a strong attack, defeating a second-rank creature single-handedly. Admiration for Dadsla spread among the group, still unaware of his true identity. Soon after, they collected the dragon's soul essence, which looked like a giant magical fruit. Lin He was satisfied, believing everything had gone according to plan. However, he was suddenly stabbed in the back by Hood, shocking the entire team. The attack was swift, and the blade was coated with poison. Huo Peng, the bald observer, began to suspect Hood's intentions. He believed the traitor was trying to profit from the mission alone. Yi He, who didn't know Huo Peng, was informed that this man was infamous for stealing from martial artists and looting dungeons. Despite his injury, the captain wanted to know how Hood had discovered the secret mission location. Yi He realized the answer lay in the poisoned dart, which likely carried the information. Hood noticed that the novice was smarter than he appeared and decided to kill him before he became a problem. Without hesitation, Hood threw one of his blades at the protagonist. Yi He blocked it using only his fingertips. Irritated by the situation, he decided it was time to eliminate the trash. Huo Peng, observing this, became more interested in Dadsla and now desired his head. Hood intensified his attacks, launching several flaming blades at Yi He. However, with his strength and control, the protagonist managed to dissipate all the projectiles using the impact of his own energy. Then Hood appeared from behind, attempting a surprise attack. Yi He seized the opportunity to test his new ability. He placed his hand on his forehead, much like Piccolo, and unleashed a direct strike that hit his opponent with tremendous force. Even injured, the captain watched closely, wondering if this young man was really a novice. Huo Peng, intrigued by such power, wanted to know which family he belonged to. Yi He, keeping up the ruse, claimed to be from the Demon Ra clan. Now unleashing his full power, Huo Peng declared that even with genetic abilities, the protagonist could not overcome the disparity in strength between them. He then activated his bloodline, awakening the Tyrant Terror Black Bear, and unleashed his martial technique Peak Shaker, causing violent tremors all around. Yi He responded directly, aiming for his opponent's leg. He easily dodged all of Huo Peng's attacks. Then he counterattacked with full force, concentrating his energy and using his strongest technique at the time, the mountain-crushing fist. The impact was devastating, sending the bald man crashing to the ground, battered and covered in marks. Lin He and the few remaining team members watched with wide eyes. They finally understood just how strong the mysterious Dadsla truly was. With a grimace on his face, Huo Peng now cursed the protagonist, believing that the martial arts he wielded were too unorthodox and would bring punishment. At the central stadium of Ansheng, a host welcomed all the students. As the college entrance examination was about to begin. This exam consisted of paired fights, with the winner advancing to the next round. The duration of the exam was 3 days. The first 2 days were for the preliminary rounds, where each student had to fight 3 times. Those who qualified could then compete in the area corresponding to the college they wished to enter. Several pairs of candidates were already positioned, but pair number 6 had yet to appear. The host noted that the combatants were Huang Tong Tong and Yi He, yet only Huang Tong Tong was in the ring. If the protagonist did not show up at the start, he would be automatically disqualified. Huang Tong Tong was visibly frustrated at her opponent's absence, believing he was hiding, which she found disappointing. The call time ran out, and everyone assumed Yi He had forfeited. But something unexpected appeared in the sky. A powerful presence approached, radiating an intense aura, making it unclear whether it was even human. In fact, it was the protagonist, arriving with impact and causing a massive explosion as he landed. Huang Tong Tong was confused, trying to understand what was happening, but before she could react, Yi He delivered a strong kick to her face. He had no intention of failing this exam. With this direct attack, he won the fight, and everyone present cheered at his triumphant entrance. His martial compatibility had now reached 20%. Captain Lin, as a form of gratitude, had given him a blood jade fruit which took some time to take effect, but significantly enhanced his body. Now, Yi He was ready to defeat any opponent. In the next 2 fights, he also emerged victorious, using only his kicks. With 3 consecutive wins, he advanced to the 3rd round. Quickly, both boys and girls began vying for his attention, as Yi He had become a rising star. Many asked if he had a preferred university, and his goal was to enter Huadu University. However, when he turned his back to the audience, many began to say he was becoming arrogant just for reaching the finals. He was very excited, as in a second-tier city like Ansheng, only the top scorers secured a place in that sacred arena. Some authorities appeared and requested Yi He's cooperation, intending to reassess the martial artist level he had achieved. They were shocked by his strength. They also discovered that, after leaving school, he had begun visiting rank E realms and wanted to know why he would risk entering such dangerous places even before the entrance exam. The truth was, he only sought to strengthen himself. Before his father passed away, he had taught Yi He that, to surpass humanity, one must stop being human. With this in mind, he repeatedly fought in the realms, facing consecutive battles and breaking his own genetic limits. Those authorities could hardly believe what they were hearing and considered reporting Yi He immediately. Meanwhile, he watched the relatives of other candidates being interviewed live, all through his smartphone. At that moment, he realized that nobody seemed to care about him. The body he now inhabited belonged to an orphan, a young man with no one. The big day arrived. It was the first official qualification round, and Yi He had to face Luo Xuan. Everyone thought the protagonist was doomed, as Luo Xuan's parents were powerful martial artists. To provoke his opponent, Yi He allowed him to make the first move. Luo Xuan, thinking it wouldn't matter, advanced quickly, but the protagonist intercepted him and easily knocked him down. The fight ended swiftly and cleanly. The audience was shocked and began to revere Yi He, as no one expected him to defeat Luo Xuan so effortlessly. A young man observing Luo Xuan's condition after the defeat showed interest in Yi He. Meanwhile, the second part of the qualification round was about to begin. A girl named Kai Xiaoling faced a beautiful and elegant young woman named Liu Qingzhu. Although Kai Xiaoling made the first move, Liu Qingzhu quickly responded, using a secret technique from her family. Even so, it was not enough. Kai Xiaoling could still react and demanded her opponent fight seriously. Then, she transformed into a giant tiger and launched a fierce assault on Liu Qingzhu, striking her with a violent series of blows. The intensity was so high that an explosion shook the arena. When the dust settled, everyone believed Kai Xiaoling had won. However, her body gave out from exhaustion, collapsing completely on the ring. Liu Qingzhu, on the other hand, remained standing. She had endured to the end and was declared the winner. The quarterfinals finally arrived. Yi He participated in the draw and got letter A. Another participant, a giant named Shen Guan, also received the same letter, meaning they would face each other. Before their fight, there would be a match between Luo Ko and Chu Zhou. While waiting, Shen Guan shared some information with Yi He, perhaps as a gesture of mutual respect before the confrontation. When it was their turn, the battle between Yi He and Shen Guan began like a full-scale war. Both fought with such force that even spectators were affected by the impacts of their techniques. The duel was so evenly matched that no one could predict the winner. At one point, Shen Guan used a special technique that invoked the power of a goat serpent, hitting the protagonist with a brutal strike. The speed and impact were terrifying, yet Yi He held his ground. Shen Guan continued his offense, applying a hadakajime, a chokehold preventing the protagonist from activating his abilities. He then struck another powerful blow, believing he had won. A stretcher was called to remove Yi He, as everyone thought he was out of combat. However, to everyone's surprise, he stood up with a changed gaze and an intimidating aura. His body was enveloped in an intense red aura, his strength seeming monstrous, and Shen Guan was the first to witness this form. It was the red red manifestation of the demon beast form. No one expected a mere high school student to reach such a stage. Tension spread throughout the tournament, as everyone feared the situation might spiral out of control. Even though he was scared, Xinguan didn't want to give up. He tried to attack once more but couldn't do anything. Yihei was on a much higher level. With no way out, Xinguan decided to surrender. The protagonist was frustrated by this, as he was ready to continue fighting. Maintaining that energy was uncomfortable, and since attacking an opponent after surrender was not allowed, Yihei ended the transformation and was declared the winner of the fight. After this explosive battle, Yihei's name spread across all social media. He had gone viral. The 4 finalists of the admission tournament were finally determined: Yihei, Liu Qingju, Chu, and Zhou. Once again, there was a draw. The protagonist drew the letter A, and to his surprise, Liu Qingju did as well. The semifinals began with the confrontation between the two. At the very start of the fight, Yihei released an intense energy, raising a cloud of dust around them. Liu Qingju only wished he were strong enough to truly face her. The dust was so dense that spectators couldn't see anything inside the ring. Yihei knew that the black-haired girl's skills were superior to his, and the longer the fight lasted, the harder it would be to defeat her. She had an extremely high combat IQ, so he needed to act with everything right from the start. Before he could attack, it was Liu Qingju who took the initiative, rushing toward him with speed. The protagonist considered using his martial chi for a defense, hoping to create an opening for a counterattack. She quickly sensed the malice in his stance and managed to dodge. The battle intensified, with both blocking each other's strikes with precision, but Yihei wasn't willing to make it easy for her. He activated his claws imbued with martial chi and tried to break the opponent's concentration. When he saw an opening, he attempted to strike, but Liu Qingju successfully blocked the attack. She still had 2 powerful techniques in reserve, yet the bigger problem was that the protagonist wasn't giving her any opportunity to use them. With no other choice, Liu Qingju realized she would have to use her final trump card. For the first time, she activated the awakening of her lineage. She knew that form was hard to control and mentally warned that the protagonist should be careful, as she wouldn't be able to gauge her own strength. However, Yihei seemed pleased to hear that, as up until that moment, he had only used 50% of his total power. Qingju moved with astonishing speed, attempted to attack him from behind. But Yihei had already prepared a technique for that moment. When the two collided, an extreme shockwave erupted. The impact was so intense that no one could keep their eyes open. The dust rose and the spectators missed that decisive moment of the fight. For a moment, Qingju hoped she had won, but the energy the boy exuded began rising dangerously. She noticed that this energy fluctuation was a terrible sign. Yihei's true form was emerging. The spines on his back began to glow and accumulated an absurd amount of energy, which was channeled to his mouth. The protagonist unleashed a gigantic energy blast at Qingju, who tried to defend herself using her feathers, creating a barrier. Even with her protection, the explosion was devastating. Suddenly, Huang Qing, the mayor of Ancheng, appeared. He observed closely, believing that the city's most powerful championship in history was unfolding at that very moment. Qingju was bleeding. Her defense had been broken by the boy's attack, and now she began to doubt whether she could defeat him. The responsibility of restoring the Liu family weighed on her shoulders. The ancestors watched every move, and her mother had devoted her life to shaping her upbringing around this goal. With a weakened body and burdened by everything she carried, she recognized just how strong the boy was. She charged at the protagonist, but left a huge opening. She tried to strike his chest, but was confused to see him remain still, not dodging. Yihei just wanted to know why she had lost her fighting spirit. To him, this battle should be taken seriously until the end. He began punching the girl repeatedly, questioning whether she would finally fight seriously. Qingju didn't understand, as she believed she had already surrendered victory to him, but now, confronted with his relentless attitude, she saw that he wasn't joking. Anger surged within her, and her energy began to leak uncontrollably. She didn't like the way she was being treated. She thought he shouldn't hit a woman in the face. However, Yihei did it only to reignite the fighting flame within her. Qingju's wings grew even larger. At that moment, she revealed her red demonic beast form. Seeing this, Yihei decided he would no longer hold back either. He had created his own technique, combining the Demora style with Qigong, forming what he called the nuclear light combat art. He believed the battle between them had finally reached its peak. Qingju created a tornado around herself, concentrating her energy until she launched an attack at the boy, resembling a sonic scream. Yihei, in turn, prepared his technique using the energy accumulated in his spines. Knowing she had no alternatives, Qingju decided to abandon defense completely and activate the most powerful technique of her lineage. She charged for a direct confrontation, touching the opponent's forehead with her skill, generating an explosion of energy. The mayor, seeing the danger, raised containment barriers to protect the audience. units. But the impact of the combined attack was so strong that all three protective walls collapsed instantly. The mayor was shocked, unsure what he would do if either of them could no longer participate in the entrance exam after that fight. Qingju was completely injured, especially in her left arm. Her demonic energy had been depleted, yet she still didn't want to give up. Yi remained firm before her, practically unharmed. She couldn't understand how the strike had landed, but he still seemed intact. The protagonist explained that if she didn't rid herself of the nuclear radiation left by his technique, she could be crippled for life. Qingju was saddened by the situation. She never wanted to fight him that way, but now she understood why he had insisted so much. However, Yi still wanted to understand whether Qingju truly didn't want to fight him or was just being stubborn, refusing to admit her competitive spirit. During the fight, he had clearly felt her desire to win. In the end, he was right. Qingju had seriously considered defeating him, to the point of abandoning defense entirely to launch a full-force attack. But now, after everything, she realized she hated fighting. She actually just wanted to lose quickly and end it. For Yi He, that was the problem. She let too many distractions occupy her mind during the battle. He touched her arm, and at that moment, the radiation and wounds began to heal. That was the reason for her defeat. Even so, the protagonist was thrilled. To him, Qingju was the strongest opponent he had faced so far, and he wanted to fight her again on another occasion. Upon hearing this, Qingju blushed. And so, Yi He was declared the winner of that battle. Then came the final. The last confrontation would be between Yi He and Chuzhou. Chuzhou wanted the protagonist to show all his capability. Yi He was also excited. The first move came from Zhou, who summoned several clones. However, Yi He immediately activated his atomic breath. Zhou found it strange that the opponent didn't even bother searching for his real body. He simply crushed all the clones with brute strength. Knowing he couldn't face the protagonist directly with his defenses, Zhou realized Yi He was a true monster. In the end, he decided he had to attack from a distance, even if it was his only option. He used the power of his lineage, activating the ice veins. After all the preparation, Yi He destroyed everything with just one move, leaving his opponent completely astonished. The protagonist then declared that ice demon dragon power was useless against him. The difference in their strength was enormous. Even so, Chuzhou decided to use the final move he had reserved specifically to face Qingju. The mayor watched silently and was surprised to see that Zhou could wield such a powerful skill. Yi He, however, resisted the attack and even managed to break his opponent's sword. With nothing else to do, Chuzhou gave up. Yi He was declared the champion of the tournament. The entire audience began cheering, shouting his name. The protagonist then participated in an interview, giving special thanks to his teacher. As being an orphan, he believed the only person who had trusted him from the start was precisely that teacher. The school principal made a special request for Yi He to promote the school even from a distance, offering 2 million yuan in return. The protagonist accepted the proposal without hesitation. After leaving the arena, Yi He was surrounded by a crowd of reporters. He tried to escape through every corner of the stadium, desperate, as he couldn't even stop to use the bathroom in peace. He eventually found refuge on the basketball court and breathed a sigh of relief upon finally escaping the press. But the tranquility didn't last long. A man wearing a hat suddenly appeared and congratulated him on his championship victory. This man came from Huadu and wanted to discuss the protagonist's genetic block. According to him, Yi He had never truly unlocked any type of genetic block. All his abilities came from the monster model. The protagonist was shocked. He couldn't understand how this man knew so much about his abilities. The man then asked if he had ever heard the term genetic block from his father. And indeed, that was exactly what had happened. The man wanted to know how his father, a simple taxi driver, knew such a specific term far removed from his professional reality. Due to these special circumstances, Huadu had decided to open a confidential file for Yi He. Prometheus was a research institute that had once dominated the field of biological genetics on the planet Blue Star. However, due to an extremely serious incident, it became the target of international investigations. Several countries united to shut down the organization. Most of the leading scientists were forced to disappear, assume new identities, and live in complete anonymity. Among their most advanced projects was the development of genetic block technology. Upon reading the confidential documents he received, Yi He began to understand the truth behind everything. The bespectacled man believed that the protagonist's father was actually a senior researcher at Prometheus. And more than that, Yi He himself was a secret genetic research project developed by the institute. Despite the impact of the revelation, the man tried to reassure him. He explained that the government would not make his life difficult. All they were doing was informing him of the situation. As someone directly involved, he had the right to know. Moreover, he was considered a key talent, cultivated by the nation's forces, and his safety would be guaranteed at all costs. After that conversation, Yi He remembered that he had secured his spot at Huadu University and had received 2 million yuan from the school principal. Now, with everything ready, he could draw a new model skill. Upon activating the function, an S-rank model creature appeared. It was a supergiant anthropomorphic being, colossal in body and humanoid in form. Model abilities could be combined, and he wondered what effects would occur if he merged the supergiant anthropomorphic model with Demora's violent model. This made him even more determined. More than ever, he wished to become the true king of monsters. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a man answered a call. His name was Huo Long, and he ordered the immediate cancellation of all his appointments. He was informed that his brother's remains had not been found in the secret realm, but traces were detected at the last location where his brother's signal had been captured. The area was contaminated with slight nuclear radiation. Huo Long heard the news while watching the protagonist on his screen. He wondered why his brother had entered the underworld and recalled his mother's last request before passing, when she entrusted him with the mission of taking care of his younger brother. Seeing Yi He win the championship, Huo Long recognized him as a rare genius in Ancheng, but lamented that he wouldn't live long enough to attend university. This man was Huo Peng's brother, and now sought revenge with all his might. Soon after, Yi He received a package. He was preparing to enter a secret realm where he would test his new model. Inside the package was a letter from Chuzhou, inviting him on a new expedition. The Central Research Institute of Huadu had confirmed that a new secret rift would open that very afternoon, and Chuzhou wanted to explore it alongside him. Still in Ancheng, on Red Tree Mountain, a crowd of martial artists gathered. Yi He was also present. New secret realms always generated high demand in the early days of their opening. There, he discovered that Chuzhou intended to attend the same university as him. When the rift opened, a massive demonic beast appeared before everyone. After destroying the creature, a new access point was revealed in the Sequoia realm, located within the mountain. The protagonist immediately sensed a strong smell of blood. A tide of beasts emerged, as if all monsters were waiting for the right moment to strike. The martial artist focused on eliminating the demonic beasts and halting the advance of the creatures. Chuzhou fought using his lineage power, but at one point was nearly struck by a monster. Before it was too late, Yi He intervened using his atomic explosive fist, saving his companion. Chuzhou was extremely grateful for the help. In the end, the protagonist concluded that none of the demonic beasts in that realm were worth the effort. Even so, Chuzhou was increasingly amazed. He had never imagined Yi He could eliminate so many creatures alone with such ease. The radiation left by Yi He's energy explosions was so intense that it seemed to have completely melted the flesh and blood of the surrounding demonic beasts. It was as if he were enveloped in constant, widespread nuclear radiation. He walked calmly, striking monsters effortlessly, hitting multiple targets at once as he advanced. Everyone witnessing the scene was in shock, many believing he could only be a high-level martial artist. One person present recognized him immediately. They had watched the live broadcast of the university tournament and clearly remembered the fight that crowned him champion. In the end, the leader of the first wave of the beast tide was defeated. Chuzhou assessed that, at the very least, they had managed to delay the initial advance of the beasts. The problem was that many martial artists had been injured during the confrontation. Yi He, meanwhile, was surrounded by demonic cores. He didn't know how to carry so many of them until Chuzhou offered his spatial ring for support, allowing the protagonist to store them there. Yi He was surprised to realize that his friend was wealthy, as such a ring was worth millions. Shortly after, a new announcement surprised everyone. Chief Wu Sen had returned. He was an immense man with a firm posture and introduced himself as the leader of the Silver Wolf Group. In front of everyone, he stated that he had heard of Yi He's achievements through his members and asked if he would be interested in joining the group. The crowd was impressed. Being personally invited by Wu Sen was an honor few martial artists had ever received. But at that moment, a woman riding a tiger also appeared. She understood Wu Sen's urgency. He wanted to recruit the protagonist before anyone else. So she introduced herself as the leader of a martial arts group from Chengda and offered an even more attractive proposal. If Yi He joined them, he would receive 15% of the team's monthly cultivation resources. Despite the tempting offers, Yi He politely declined both invitations. He was not yet interested in joining any group. As the tide of beasts dissipated, the environment became calmer, allowing them to eat and explore freely. They began surveying the region and soon encountered gigantic creatures. Yi He didn't see them as unreachable. On the contrary, he believed there were demonic enhancements that could make them that size. Chuzhou, however, did not think the same way. Facing such colossal and unknown entities, he felt fear. While exploring, the protagonist noticed something strange. His vital force field allowed him to detect the presence of living beings throughout the realm, but there was a lake ahead that seemed like an absolute vacuum. No life existed in that space. To him, where there is an anomaly, there is also treasure, and the greater the risk, the greater the reward. Without hesitation, Yi He decided to dive into the area and invited Chuzhou, since they had come this far together. As they approached the lake, he encountered a long-haired girl named Yuli. She had no idea that Yi He was as powerful as he seemed. The young man asked how long she had been there, and she explained that she had just arrived with her group. Some of her companions, equipped with diving suits, had already descended to explore the lake. Shortly after, one of the divers emerged enthusiastically enthusiastically, saying that they had found submerged ruins and could become rich from them. Yihei didn't understand why they were so excited, as he still didn't know what a ruin was. In the realms, ruins were mysterious structures, possibly left by a previous civilization, and they were the foundation of many human martial arts and modern genetic technologies. Scholars considered them fundamental for the advancement of human abilities. However, Yu Yang, one of Yuli's team members, noticed other people nearby and didn't want to share the discovery. He began to provoke and show hostility. Yuli tried to prevent the conflict. Hei merely showed interest in helping explore the ruins. In the end, they reached an agreement. Any items found would be divided according to each person's contribution. With everything settled, they dove together into the submerged ruins. Yu Yang began searching for Li Wei, who should have been guarding the area, but he was not visible. He also mentioned that they had used demon beast bait to test the area, and none had appeared so far, which was strange. As they explored, Yihe began to sense that something was wrong. Chuzhou also noticed inconsistencies. Yuli's timeline didn't add up. She had said her team had just arrived, which would mean they had been at the lake for a maximum of 10 minutes. If they had really discovered such a well-hidden route to these ruins, Yihe thought it almost seemed like a video game cheat. It made him suspicious, like it could be a trap. Even so, he stayed calm and told himself not to worry too much, since he still had a card up his sleeve if things got out of control. Yuli began to get irritated. She wanted to know where the ruins Yu Yang had promised were. It was then that they found Li Wei, but he was already dead, leaving only his bones on the ground. Suddenly, Yu Yang's head exploded in front of everyone, revealing that a parasite had been controlling him. Without hesitation, Yi Hei unleashed his energy technique, firing an attack equivalent to a Kamehameha. He would not wait to see what that monster was capable of. The creature had become an intelligent parasite, using Yu Yang as bait to lure more victims. To make matters worse, the monster had blocked the only escape route. Chuzhou recognized the type of creature. He had read about it before. It was a demon ghost vine, a second-tier demon beast. Yuli was shocked, as this creature was classified as a king-level beast, extremely rare and dangerous. However, Yihai didn't care about classifications. To him, any monster could be destroyed if he applied enough force. Suddenly, an explosion shook the cave. Huolong appeared out of nowhere, declaring that he had come only to take Yihei's life. He explained that he had detected signs of nuclear radiation in the Redwood Mountain realm and had followed the traces until finding the culprit, and it could only be the young man. Yihei, for his part, had no idea who this man was, who had arrived speaking as if they were old enemies. Furious, Huolong believed he had been lured into a trap. He thought Yi He had deliberately led him into the monster's lair, hoping he would die there. To him, everything was part of a Machiavellian plan by the protagonist, which made him even angrier. According to him, his target was only the boy, not the weeds scattered across the cave. The cave structure began to collapse. Yi He decided to act, activating his abilities to protect the others. He asked everyone to escape first. Huolong, however, blocked the exit. He didn't want anyone to escape, least of all his target. Seeing the situation, Chuzhou decided to stay and support Yi He, even without fully understanding the reason for the fight. Tension rose as the protagonist unleashed his atomic fist against Huolong, creating space for Chuzhou to climb and escape. He knew the man was a top-tier martial artist, and this would be an extremely difficult battle. Meanwhile, the demon ghost vine went berserk, destroying everything around the lake. Yuli stayed behind, worried about the protagonist, but Yi He continued fighting with his new ability until he managed to defeat the enemy. After the battle, he managed to leave the area, borrowed clothes, and preferred to hide the fact that he possessed such a powerful technique. It was easier to deceive others than reveal all his secrets. Yuli decided to leave with her companions. She felt sorry for having brought them there for nothing, and promised to make it up to them later. But for Yi He, that favor had already been paid with the opportunity to explore the ruins and eliminate the monster. 3 days later, at the entrance to the Redwood Mountain realm, they encountered something incredible. In just a few days, the location had transformed into an improvised city with its own infrastructure and even transport planes. Yi He didn't waste time. Carrying sacks full of demon beast cores and spirit herbs, he went straight to the evaluation center. When the specialists began examining what he had brought, they were completely shocked by the quality of the materials. Some of the herbs were so rare that they could barely be found on the market. The protagonist left the place satisfied, carrying a substantial amount of money after selling just the demon cores. Now, he needed to find a buyer for the evaluated spirit herbs. While considering his next steps, a car stopped nearby, and a man introduced himself as Li Yutiano, owner of Pinghei Pharmacy, explaining that he had heard about the protagonist's stock and was willing to buy all the spirit herbs at a price 1% above market value. The protagonist was slightly concerned about how quickly information about him was spreading, but since he needed to sell the herbs, he decided to make a deal with Li Yutian and even made more money from it. Now that this matter was settled, he understood that his next goal was to obtain some powerful martial arts abilities. At the school principal's office, the protagonist was received with great respect. which he found somewhat exaggerated. Yihe even brought medicinal wine as a gift, which pleased the principal greatly. The young man explained that he wanted to learn powerful combat techniques, but since he had not officially enrolled in the university, his only option was to seek help from a traditional martial arts family. Even so, the principal believed he was being hasty, as his admission to Huadu University was already guaranteed. Despite the advice, Yihe remained impatient and determined to improve quickly. The next day, by noon, the principal had arranged everything. The traditional Liu family had agreed to teach their secret arts to the young man, which left him completely surprised. Without wasting time, the protagonist took his bike and went to the Liu family residence. As soon as he arrived, several powerful martial arts abilities appeared in his vital force field, signaling that the place was indeed special. He was received by Qingzhu, and he initially thought she might be annoyed by his presence, but soon realized she wasn't. The girl led him to her mother, the head of the family, Qinlan, an elegant and very beautiful woman. After the university tournament, Qingzhu had been very embarrassed, but her mother tried to calm her, saying she had watched the live broadcast of the fight and believed she had performed very well. Moreover, Qinlan revealed that Qingzhu's brother had limited talent and was not capable of inheriting the family's responsibilities, which made Qingzhu the only one able to assume that role. Even so, Qinlan considered her daughter a very beautiful young woman and suitable for taking on important responsibilities. The desires of the Liu family ancestors had changed over time, and with Qingzhu's father's premature death, the family had lost the support of a great master. Therefore, Qinlan thought the best future for her daughter would be alongside Yihe, who was extremely talented and came from a humble background. She did not demand an immediate response from her daughter, but suggested that she spend more time with him to see how things would develop. That was how the protagonist arrived at the Liu family home, bringing a gift for Qinlan. She made it clear that he would have access to all the family's knowledge and that Qingzhu would take him to the martial arts pavilion. Since those techniques were forbidden to be taken outside, he would only have one day to study everything he could there. Additionally, there were 3 Xuanhuang-level martial skills available in that location, if the protagonist was capable of learning them. He was grateful for the opportunity. While Qingzhu guided him to the pavilion, the protagonist found her behavior strange, so he decided to get closer, but she didn't understand why he was approaching so closely. Soon they entered the pavilion, where the martial skills were organized by categories, such as movement techniques, defense, and body temperament. All he had to do was use an identification card to access the rooms. The Xuanhuang level skills were kept in a small stone room at the end of the corridor, and he only needed to swipe his card to enter. Even so, Qingzhu thought it unlikely that he could comprehend the Xuanhuang skills in just one day, as this type of learning was usually superficial. The protagonist decided to choose one of these skills, but instead of finding a book, he encountered a statue. Suddenly, he was transported to the so-called martial rhythm world. He remembered the girl's words, explaining that this type of technique was not limited to books, as it could also appear in the form of statues, paintings, or even tools. Any object could serve as a vessel for the martial rhythm, a mystical power left behind by a great master. Only someone of that level could seal the martial rhythm in an object to transmit their legacy. The rest would depend solely on the apprentice's sensitivity. If fate allowed, he would naturally be able to sense this martial rhythm. This martial world functioned as a spiritual space where he could not even activate the dwelling mode, as if he had reverted to being an ordinary weak person. It was then that a creature appeared before him, laughing and stating that only a true man was worthy of inheriting his martial arts. If not, he preferred his legacy to be lost. Yihe, looking at the figure, realized it was identical to the statue. The creature, seemingly the spirit of an ancient master, began speaking many things to him, and then the trial began. Several monsters appeared around him, and Yihe quickly drew his sword, trying to eliminate them all at once. He suspected that this trial was not just about fighting random ghosts, but that some hidden item was involved. The creature, observing the situation, thought the candidate was just another fool and complained that martial artists were becoming increasingly lost. However, he soon noticed that the ghosts could not even approach the protagonist. Yihe believed that the system itself was protecting his body within the spiritual world. This puzzled the creature, as he believed no one should be immune to the martial rhythm, and he couldn't understand how the young man had achieved such a feat. Still, he decided to leave his legacy to Yihe, but wanted to test if he could endure everything until the end. Following instructions, the protagonist approached a well. The well contained the essence of calm qi, condensed by the master over a lifetime. At the bottom of the well was also imprisoned the technique known as the body-sealing demon, and the protagonist fell inside. At his peak, the creature had been a true hero, one of the few men capable of conquering an S-ranked secret realm. His success came thanks to the demonic technique, but it also caused his downfall. Over time, as his chi and blood weakened, the vengeful entities trapped in his body began to revolt. Unable to control them, he ended up killing several people around him and decided to end it all. with his own hands. Before dying, he mixed all the vengeful souls and the chi of lamentation with his martial rhythm, sealing everything inside the statue. Although 100 years had passed and much of the chi in the martial rhythm space had dissipated, that power was still not something any martial apprentice could endure. In the surveillance room, Qinlan watched everything with her daughter, seeing the protagonist writhing in pain. When he first fell asleep, everything seemed normal, and he even smiled as if he were fine. But now, his body convulsed, and blood ran down his skin. The third Zhuanhuang level martial skill had been discovered by Qingju's grandfather by chance in his later years. He tried to cultivate it once, but was rejected by the martial rhythm sealed within the statue, causing severe internal injuries. Since then, no one in the Liu family had successfully cultivated this skill. Suddenly, the protagonist awakened and thanked the senior for passing on his technique. The spirit of the ancient master thought Yi He was the most talented young man he had ever met, but deep down, he believed Yi He had only succeeded by using tricks, almost like he had hacked the process. Even so, the result was real. The statistics on the panel hadn't increased, but Yi He was certain his combat power was now at least twice what it had been, as he had truly mastered a Zhuanhuang-level martial skill. The women hurried over, wanting to speak with him. Qinlan could not understand how this was possible, as even with Qingju's talent, it would take at least 7 days of intense training in the martial rhythm space to achieve a preliminary understanding of a skill at that level. However, the true genius was not her daughter, but the young man standing right before her, Yi He himself. As they still seemed suspicious, he decided to demonstrate. Suddenly, a powerful energy began spreading around him. It was the calm qi, the same one he had absorbed in the martial rhythm world. Qinlan was completely shocked by what she saw, while Yi He felt awkward realizing the woman was clearly enchanted by him. Now that he had mastered one Zhuanhuang level technique, he would have the chance to try the other two, as he still had an entire day left in the pavilion. However, the young man was exhausted and decided it was better to leave for now. Learning that he had come by bicycle, Qinlan offered him a car for the return trip. However, he explained that he didn't like cars much, preferred motorcycles, and asked if one was available. Remembering that her son had several motorcycles, Qinlan decided to gift one to Yi He. Meanwhile, Qingju's brother returned home, curious about who the stranger was. But before he could see the young man's face, the protagonist passed by at high speed riding one of his motorcycles. The young man realized it was the same boy from the bicycle and was shocked to see him now speeding on his own bike. Feeling hungry, Yi He decided to have a meal. He now included demon beast cores in his diet and even prepared a spicy sauce to accompany them. He ate a blue demon core, which immediately boosted his stats. Wishing to further enhance his body, he allocated all points received into the giant model. Then he ate a golden core from a second-tier ghost demon vine. The energy was so intense that it caused a mutation in his body. The risk was high. If the mutation caused a shift to a lower attribute, it would result in regression. But he decided to take the chance anyway. In the end, he succeeded. His body began to carry the power of the cosmic dwelling. Despite his happiness, he knew he still needed to bring that model to its full form, and for that, it was urgent to continue leveling up. Then he heard a loud noise coming from outside. He thought maybe someone was causing trouble. Indeed, a police team had surrounded the place. They began knocking on the door of the house where he was, which had previously belonged to a solitary person, so it was unlikely to receive visitors at that hour. Moreover, he hadn't ordered any deliveries. Suddenly, a huge woman wearing a helmet appeared at the window. She realized that the young man was not an ordinary martial artist. Her initial plan was merely to hide something in that house and erase the young man's memory, but since he had discovered her, she decided he would have to suffer a little. If he tried to escape, things would only get worse. Meanwhile, outside, the police were trying to apprehend a young man. Inside, Yi He unleashed a skill against the mysterious woman, while on the lower floor, the man fought directly against the police forces. At the end of the battle, the woman believed it was best to retreat, as she had been completely beaten thanks to Yi He's strike. They managed to escape, and the suit she wore had already repaired some of the damage from the previous impact. However, Yi He appeared shortly after to demand explanations, wanting to know the reason for the invasion of his home and being sure that she had already realized the magnitude of the problem they were facing. The man beside her was incredulous, unable to understand how Yi He had found them, but in reality, the protagonist had traced the nuclear radiation of the helmeted woman named Yao Yimei. Yi He planned to use them as a test for the strength of the new demonic body he now possessed, which worried the enemy, who was soon struck by a brutal impact, causing him to spit blood. Meanwhile, Yao Yimei wanted to know who Yi He's master was, as she found his martial skill absurdly strong. However, he had no ordinary master. His master was the dwelling, something she had never heard of, and she was surprised to realize that a small city like Anshang could harbor so many powerful experts. The other man thought Yi He was being too arrogant and decided to transform, as he would not accept being humiliated in that way. At the same time, Yao Yimei activated the stealth mode of her nanosuit, attempting to disappear from sight. However, Yihei was not interested in her. He only wanted her out of his way, and then launched a devastating strike, hitting her directly. With the woman defeated, only the man who looked like a rhinoceros remained. He assumed his crowned rhinoceros form, and his defense increased absurdly. Now he could even withstand tank fire, becoming nearly unbreakable. Yihei felt the difference on the initial impact, as he was hit with full force. Taking advantage of the dust cloud that rose, he disappeared from the spot and then surprised the enemy with an attack, growing to colossal size before him. The man transformed into a rhinoceros named Zhou Yi was shocked, unsure whether he was dealing with a demonic beast or something even more terrifying. Yao Yimei, seeing through the system that the gigantic being was indeed Yihei, realized she should not have provoked a monster like him. With the situation out of control, she understood that Zhou Yi would be beaten to death, and since she also could no longer escape, she decided to fight to the end. She charged toward Yihei, who was still in his gigantic form, and launched cutting wires around him. Those wires were strong enough to slice high-resistance metal alloys. With a decisive move, she managed to rip the giant's head off. However, Yihei's head fell right in front of her and launched a point-blank attack. Shortly after, he returned to his normal form. Zhou Yi was completely covered in blood, terrified, and now certain that Yihei was a true monster. He believed that since he was going to die, he would take Yihei with him. Before that, he revealed that the woman Yihei had just killed had hidden something important in her room, called the Golden Gene. This item now belonged to the protagonist, but it would only bring endless pursuit upon him. Tired of hearing so many words, Yihei kicked Zhou Yi in the face, determined to get rid of the body quickly. Later, back in his apartment, he spoke with Qingju's mother, wanting to know how the police investigation had gone. Qinlan tried to calm Yihei, saying he should move on with his life, but he soon saw the Golden Gene, exactly as Zhou Yi had mentioned before. The symbol on it was familiar, as it had appeared in Prometheus's secret files, handed to him by a man from Huadu. It was clear that the two intruders had stolen the gene from the Laserbird group, and for that reason, they were being pursued. With these clues, Yihei understood he needed to act. So, he decided to find a hotel to spend the night and rest before making any decision. Meanwhile, in the depths of the B-ranked secret realm known as the Swan Lake, several groups tried to extract profit from the area. Suddenly, one of the teams called the captain, as the entire environment was engulfed in an intense red glow. Various monsters began to appear around. Among them, a 5th position, Overlord-class demonic beast, known as the Burning-Eyed Black Monkey, led the horde. The situation required the army to be alerted immediately, as this Overlord-class beast led a true tide of creatures. However, no one could send the warning as they died before completing any communication. Panic spread as the tide of beasts from the Swan Lake realm in Ansheng was about to exceed the region's limits, generating fear throughout the population. Local authorities acted quickly. Police spread across all city districts, and all martial artists were called in to provide support. Due to the imminent risk of destruction, only students and children were allowed to board the trains and evacuate the city. In government offices, the mayor of Ansheng had requested help from neighboring cities, but this time the problem was bigger. Several cities across the country were issuing alerts for the beast tide. All regions began constructing defenses, trying to prepare for a possible disaster. The mayor still questioned the situation in Huadu, as martial artists of Grandmaster level or higher could be decisive in combat. But another problem arose. An S-ranked secret realm had appeared in Guanshuan, a city neighboring Huadu, forcing all martial artists from the capital to go there to contain this new threat. Without the necessary support, the mayor realized the only solution was to rely on his own city's strength. At the Chu residence, Yihei trained with his colleague Zhou, who was curious when he had learned the Xuanhuang martial skill. Yihei said it had been only a month. Zhou was impressed by how much he had already strengthened in such a short period. During the training, both received an alert about the beast tide invasion. It was an evacuation order. Zhou wanted to know if Yihei intended to flee, believing that with his talent, it would be better to seek safety. But the protagonist thought it was nonsense and was sure he should participate in the fight. Meanwhile, Qingju argued with her mother, determined to support the city's defense. Her mother, however, feared that her daughter might not return alive. After all, an Overlord-class beast was an enemy that even Grandmasters could not face. Qingju believed that if a family of martial artists could not withstand demonic beasts, she would have no reason to exist. At the same time, the Liu family was leaving the city. As for Yihei, Qinlan decided only to leave a message, allowing him to make his own decision about what to do. In the Swan Lake realm, numerous people gathered, ready to face the legion of monsters. The entrance was surrounded by heavily armed police. They formed Ansheng's last line of defense. The mayor had made it clear that everyone had a mission: gather basic information about the beast tide, and if possible, also discover the abilities of the overlord-class demonic beasts. Additionally, he wanted everyone to return alive. When he saw a soldier seriously injured and missing an arm, the mayor urgently called the doctors. The wounded man handed over a USB drive containing all data from the battle recorded by the Vanguard group, ensuring that at least this information would not be lost. The mayor wanted to know if there were survivors among the other team members, but received confirmation that all were dead. The wounded man wept heavily, explaining that the beast tide had simply trampled everyone, leaving them no chance to recover the bodies. He insisted that everyone be careful of the burning-eyed black monkey, as it was an extremely dangerous threat. Suddenly, rocks began to fall near the landmines that had been placed as a defense. Then, the mines detonated, destroying much of the fortifications that were being built. This was clearly an attack coming from the secret realm, accompanied by war tanks. It wasn't just a simple demon beast assault, it was a long-range attrition strategy. The mayor, realizing the enemy's intent, ordered fire on the rift of the realm. The intelligence behind the attack terrified everyone. Instead of sending the demon beast directly, the enemy was using tactics to weaken the front line first. This deeply angered the mayor, as that overlord-class creature seemed to act with human reasoning. The second wave of attacks began, and the number of stone projectiles launched by the enemy increased drastically. The soldiers tried to shoot and destroy as many monsters as they could, but they were far too weak. The monsters advanced mercilessly, devouring the combatants as if they were nothing. The mayor struggled to coordinate everything, immediately transmitting any readings he received to minimize damage and save as many lives as possible. On the other side of the battle, the burning-eyed black monkey believed victory was already assured. To him, humans had no chance of surviving. He then ordered the monsters to completely crush the land. Yahello, observing everything, reflected on what would happen to Ansheng. Even though he had been there for only a few months, he had developed some attachment to the place. He knew he couldn't allow those beasts to ruin the peaceful life he had painstakingly built. He decided it was time to act. Transforming, he moved to support other regions. Kai Xiaoling herself was also fighting to defend the city, as was Chu Zhou. During the battle, a war tank suddenly appeared behind Zhou, about to crush him. Narrowly, he dodged and used his sword to cut the tank in half, escaping the attack. Soon after, a new threat emerged. A first-grade overlord-class demon beast passed through the rift and entered the battlefield. This creature was completely unlike anything they had faced before. No one knew how to deal with it, but Yahello appeared at the perfect moment, unleashing an energy attack resembling a Kamehameha, saving Chu Zhou. He was now at the same height as the massive white demon beast. With a precise strike, he brought the creature down and stood on its body in a clear display of dominance. Smiling, he seemed to enjoy the situation and decided it was time to take care of the creature's hygiene. The beast's mouth was enormous, and Yahello launched an energy blast directly into it, destroying it completely. One of the young men accompanying Xiaoling and Chu Zhou thought there were two demon beasts fighting each other and considered retreating, but Chu Zhou explained that the massive being was in fact Yahello himself. With their friend present, they believed the city could withstand the massive assault. Yahello decided to leave that point under Zhou's care and moved to support other areas where the fighting was more intense. Using his life force field, he began tracking locations with the highest combat pressures, trying to locate where the most powerful demon beasts were concentrated. Once he found the hotspots, he ran straight toward them. In other parts of the city, the situation was desperate. Conventional weapons no longer worked against the beasts. The police, with no other option, took up bayonets to try to resist, but the enemy creature was so strong that it pierced them with its horns, as if preparing a human barbecue. Many soldiers realized they were just ordinary combatants and could not defeat those beasts. The only viable option was to retreat. However, some still believed that even ordinary soldiers should die in war, as it would be a worthy end. At that moment, a strange red aura began spreading across the battlefield, leaving the soldiers completely confused, not understanding what was emerging. Suddenly, Yahello simply blew the head off one of the demon beasts as if it were insignificant, killing the creature instantly. His presence on the battlefield had such an impact that, in other combat zones, many warriors were confused to see the demon beasts retreating without any apparent reason. However, among the more informed, news began circulating that Yahello, the same young man who had won the entrance tournament, was now fighting directly on the front lines. This sparked rumors that the demon beasts were planning to surround him. In response, several combatants decided they could not allow him to be eliminated by the beast order. So, they joined the battlefield to protect him. Yahello continued firing his energy at the surrounding monsters, but had to act cautiously, as the burning-eyed black monkey was observing his every move. His presence drew too much attention, and soon all the other martial masters also arrived in the combat area. Meanwhile, the mayor did everything he could to maintain control of the city. He ordered the construction of walls to contain the invasion. The divine wall created by his ability managed to trap some of the demon heads, but that was not enough. They knew that to stop the beast tide for good, the only way was to eliminate the overlord while there was still time. Suddenly, a demon beast charged directly at the mayor, who reacted with one of his abilities, striking the creature precisely. But the danger did not cease. A colossal monster appeared before him. It was the mountain-submerging giant crocodile, the personal mount of the burning-eyed black monkey. If the overlord's mount was on the field, it meant the monkey himself was about to act. The mayor, realizing the gravity of the situation, quickly tried to analyze the possibilities. The enormous creature destroyed entire buildings effortlessly, as if they were mere dry leaves. He tried to approach, looking for an opening, until he managed to reach the giant crocodile and launched a direct attack, almost point blank. However, the monster's response was brutal. The city was hit by a powerful counterattack ability that devastated part of the urban area all at once. Even so, the mayor was relieved to have received advance information about the creature's arrival. Thanks to this, he managed to evacuate critical areas and prevented the death of even more civilians. With all the strength he had left, he launched his final strike against the mountain-submerging giant crocodile. He hit the target, causing significant damage, but it still wasn't enough to bring the creature down. Then he realized, too late, that it had all been a trap. The mayor was caught by the burning-eyed black monkey himself, who revealed himself from behind the smoke curtain. He wanted to know what the human was doing with his mount, and filled with fury, gripped the mayor with brutal force. Then he prepared to crush his head, determined to show the world that humans were insignificant beings before the absolute power of the demon beasts. The black monkey with burning eyes managed to dodge the explosion at the very last moment. He had already confirmed that the city had no truly powerful martial artist, so he was determined to defeat them all. The mayor refused to accept defeat and launched a powerful attack. The monkey was surprised by the man's resilience, but he found it all pointless. To him, the mayor was merely delaying his death. On that battlefield, there was no one who could threaten him. The fight had become a game in which he wanted to witness fear and despair consume humanity. All he wanted was to see the terrified look in people's eyes. The mayor managed to land a hit. The monkey found his speed impressive, but his power was weak. Other times, his strength was decent, but his speed too slow. He wanted to see the man on his knees, begging for his life, but that never happened. Instead, the mayor remained standing, with the same calm gaze. That infuriated the monkey. He wanted to understand why that man wasn't afraid. That demonic creature was intelligent, but the mayor believed it had miscalculated. In the end, the black monkey with burning eyes was nothing more than an arrogant beast. The mayor then used a forbidden technique. He created a trap to seal the creature underground. His plan was to imprison it beneath the surface. The beast thought the mayor was naive. It believed that once the sand weakened, it would break free and destroy the man who opposed it. But the mayor didn't see his plan as a desperate gamble. To him, it was a symbol of courage, a hymn to humanity. He thrust his hand into his own chest, revealing that he had implanted the only tactical device of Ansheng inside his heart since the beginning of the war. That device was a hidden bomb connected to his heartbeat. When his heart stopped beating, it would detonate. The monkey didn't believe it. He thought the mayor was bluffing. But in truth, the mayor had never planned to survive that battle. He was willing to give everything for the city of Ansheng. He had made that promise to his people, and he wasn't lying. A powerful explosion followed. Everyone in the city received an urgent message that the bomb had gone off and that the area near the Swan Lake domain needed to be evacuated. Soldiers and martial artists wept. The mayor's death caused a wave of grief. All who received the message paid their respects. It became a moving funeral. The explosion destroyed nearly everything, leaving behind only the skeleton of the black monkey with burning eyes. Yet even in that state, it began to regenerate. It had never imagined it would nearly die at the hands of a human. Furious, it swore to annihilate the entire city, but before doing so, it decided to return to the domain of sin to recover its blood and energy. Once healed, it would turn Ansheng to ashes. However, Yi He appeared to stop it. The monkey remembered that young man well, one of the greatest obstacles during the beast's invasion. For the creature that had survived the explosion, Yi He was terrifying. Without wasting a moment, Yi He struck. The monkey thought him naive and saw an opportunity to kill him. Yi He used a technique similar to a bomb. Another explosion erupted, shocking everyone. Many believed the mayor had left another hidden bomb, even after his death. The monkey trembled after the blast, beginning to think Yi He wasn't human. In its eyes, the young man looked more like a demonic beast than the monkey itself. In his titan form, Yi He crushed the monkey as if it were nothing. The beast tried to counterattack, unwilling to be underestimated. The clash between the two was massive. Yi He's hand started to bleed. His body had already surpassed normal limits, yet he still couldn't fully overpower the black monkey with burning eyes. The creature lay on the ground, weakened, unable to believe how fast Yi He had recovered after taking its strongest attack. Realizing he had no chance against the young man, the monkey tried to flee in desperation. Yi He didn't let him escape. Sadness filled him as he thought of how this monster had been responsible for Mayor Huang's death. Channeling all his strength, he unleashed a powerful energy blast that nearly disintegrated the monkey's body. Yi already knew the creature was digging underground, pretending to be dead to escape. Using his life-sensing ability, he found the perfect moment to strike once and for all. He felt regret for not having found the beast sooner. Perhaps the mayor's death could have been avoided. He soon located the hidden monkey and, seeing it was still wounded, fired another energy blast. The hit landed clean. The monkey was paying the price for all it had done. Even weakened, it gathered the last of its energy, drawing power from its demonic core to try and drag Yahello to hell with it. It attacked with everything it had, but Yahello was so powerful that the monster's arm disintegrated on impact. Unable to retaliate, the monkey was crushed and devoured by Yahello's titanic form. Afterward, Yahello felt a sharp headache. Something was assaulting his mind, possibly a psychic attack. He wondered if another enemy was nearby. Suddenly, countless hands appeared from nowhere, dragging the monkey's corpse as if trying to save it. More hands sprouted around the titan's joints, trying to restrain Yahello's movements. But that wasn't enough to defeat him. Yahello ignited his own body, burning away many of the hands that held him. Meanwhile, the monkey crawled toward the underground exit, but fate turned against it. The very hands that protected it caught fire too. Amid the chaos, a strange, ghostly creature emerged. Yahello didn't know what it was, but he could sense its terrifying power. It seemed to be an overlord, a high-class demonic beast. The creature attacked without warning. Even though Yahello had blocked the titan's ears to defend against sonic attacks, the entity's scream pierced through, striking directly at his mind. Yahello was shaken, but refused to let the enemy think Ansheng was weak. He released a massive surge of energy and emerged from the titan's body. Moments later, the titan's body exploded. But it wasn't an ordinary explosion. Everyone was stunned as the entire rift detonated along with it. In the end, Mayor Huang's sacrifice had not been in vain. With the enemy weakened and the rift destroyed, Ansheng's martial artists began hunting down the remaining demonic beasts in the city. Medical teams spread out to help the survivors. Meanwhile, in the Swan Lake domain, the center of the nuclear explosion, Yahello slowly regained consciousness. He wanted to know how long he had been unconscious. He had used all the nuclear energy within his body to cause the Titan's explosion, leaving the area heavily irradiated. He knew how difficult the task had been. Although his monster form was incredibly resilient, he understood that he was still not strong enough to face an overlord-class demonic beast alone. Still, he was determined to reach the peak of combat power in the Xia Nation. He knew he needed to plan his next steps carefully. He believed that being transported to this world meant he had an important mission to fulfill. A month after the disaster, the Xia Nation erected a statue of Mayor Huang in the city center, a tribute to his ultimate sacrifice. 18 cities across the Xia Nation had been attacked by the beast tides, and 12 had already fallen. The situation was critical. Thus, 5 Grandmaster-level experts were dispatched to investigate. Among them was Grandmaster Du Jingming, who led the team. Everyone already knew this invasion was far from normal. In addition to demonic beasts, an S-class secret realm had also appeared. Fu Hongsheng, the strongest martial artist in the Xia Nation, waited outside that secret realm. He was searching for promising warriors but found none. He decided to enter Guanshan City himself, only to be gravely wounded. The city of Han Waters became the 11th completely destroyed zone. All its inhabitants were killed. When Yahello learned of this, he was shocked. Even a National Guardian-level warrior had been slain. To him, that was a clear sign that he could no longer afford to wait. He sought help from Qin Lan, asking her to acquire high-quality demonic cores, especially purple ones, and rare plants. She thought he was being too demanding, as plant-type beasts were extremely hard to find. She wanted to know what he would offer in return. He then promised to help her daughter, guaranteeing that she would take first place in Huadu's secret evaluation. Qin Lan found the offer bold. She knew that the gunners from other provinces were far above average. Although Yahello had defeated her daughter in the arena, he was still far behind the true elite prodigies. Even so, the protagonist knew her situation well. He understood that her only chance to rebuild her family was to bet everything on him, so he made a promise. If he couldn't help Qingju win first place, he would work for Qin Lan for the rest of his life, even taking care of her in old age. She liked the proposal and accepted the deal. After their conversation, the protagonist went to the central hospital of Ansheng. There, he was immediately surrounded by people. Everyone wanted to talk to him. They treated the young man like a celebrity, like an international star. At the hospital, he wanted to visit Chu Zhou, whose entire body was wrapped in bandages. He also ran into Luo Xuan, his very first opponent, whom he had nearly forgotten. He was surprised to see that Luo Xuan had lost a leg during the war, but he believed that, with current technology, regeneration surgery would be possible. The hospital director scolded him for having blocked an important ally from Huadu. Shortly afterward, Yahello received a call from Wang Tao, from the admissions office of the Imperial Capital University. The official informed him that classes in Huadu would begin in a month and that a special train would come to pick him up in 3 days. Not long after, the protagonist returned to the site of the nuclear explosion at Swan Lake. The mushroom cloud had thrown tons of dust into the atmosphere. The sky was now dark and heavy, as if it were eternally night. Yihei returned because, during his fight against the black monkey with burning eyes, he had released an enormous amount of nuclear energy. The radiation there had created an ideal environment for cultivation, which greatly improved his energy compatibility. After absorbing some of that energy, he left. He needed to be ready for the special train. Chuzhou had also been accepted into the same university, and the two boarded together. Along the way, Yihei used his life perception ability to observe the passengers. He noticed several experts aboard, but only 5 of them could withstand more than 3 moves against him. Suddenly, the Huadu University train came under attack by an unknown enemy. Everyone was ordered to evacuate immediately as an investigation began. The atmosphere grew tense, and panic spread among the students. Chuzhou asked Yihei what he thought about the situation. Yihei, just as confused, decided to act. A freshman named Zhou Jingxian appeared, injured, and Yihei tried to find out what had happened. Jingxian looked desperate and said the enemy had taken control of the first 3 carriages. They possessed a special domain that could drag people into a separate space, completely isolating the battlefield. He said that almost all the teachers in that area were dead. Amid the chaos, Yihei realized he couldn't just stand by. Another freshman, a long-haired, sharp-eyed young man named Yan Zhengxiang, began questioning the situation. He found it suspicious that the teachers had given Jingxian a token and that he alone had survived. It was hard to believe Jingxian had escaped on his own. Yan ordered everyone to move aside and went to investigate himself. Jingxian looked at Yihei and asked if it was really him. Using his life perception, Yihei sensed something odd about the student and asked how he knew him. Jingxian explained that a girl named Liu Qingzhu had shown him photos of Yihei and had asked him to warn Yihei not to go to the front carriages under any circumstances. Yihei was completely shocked by the revelation. Jingxian said that Liu Qingzhu had been gravely injured by a metal rod while trying to protect him. He admitted he couldn't stop the others from running straight to their deaths, but he'd never forget her and would do anything to survive. Yihei found the boy strange. He knew Liu Qingzhu was still alive, yet Jingxian spoke as if she were dead. Since Yihei had made a promise to her mother, he resolved not to let anything bad happen to the girl and decided to act. Jingxian tried to block his way, which made Chuzhou impatient. Chu pulled out his weapon and aimed it at Jingxian, but Yihei preferred to settle things with a single punch, clearing a path for himself and his friend. When they reached the front, Yihei found the entrance to the separate space Jingxian had mentioned. To test it, he tossed a suitcase inside, but was frustrated when it vanished without a sound or reaction. His life perception couldn't detect any energy within that space. Determined, Yihei stepped in. Instantly, he was teleported to a strange place, one he didn't like at all. Chuzhou had entered with him, but had disappeared. Yihei realized his life perception didn't work there and suspected some kind of suppression field. He climbed to the top of a building and launched an attack straight into the sky. The explosion was immense, stunning everyone nearby. Liu Qingzhu immediately recognized it as Yihei's power. His attack drew not only allies and classmates, but also enemies. A strange human appeared. Yihei thought he was wearing a pig mask. He decided to rip it off with a punch to the face. To his surprise, the enemy withstood the blow, though his own blade managed to cut Yihei. However, Yihei healed almost instantly, as if he had Wolverine-like regeneration. Without hesitation, Yihei struck directly at the enemy's mouth and managed to tear off the mask. Inside it, he found a pendant and grew curious about it. He wondered whether the item was related to the judgment beasts of Huadu University. Observing the enemy's weapon, Yihei noticed it had been enhanced with the martial chi of a high-ranking martial artist. Now he wanted to uncover the true purpose of the pendant. An arrow struck Yihei's body, but shattered upon impact. A new enemy appeared, also masked, carrying twin crossbows and firing multiple arrows at Yihei. Even after being hit several times, Yihei wasn't defeated. The attacks weren't strong enough to kill him. He countered with a powerful blow that caused a massive explosion, making the building start to collapse. The enemy wore a rabbit mask, and Yihei began to suspect that the masked figures were connected to the Chinese zodiac. Just as he was about to land a kick on the rabbit-masked opponent, the enemy dodged effortlessly and fired a counter arrow. Yihei would have been hit squarely, but Chuzhou appeared, raising an ice wall in front of him, blocking the shot and saving his life. Chuzhou decided to take on the enemy himself and launched into battle. The fight was fierce. He held nothing back. Meanwhile, Yihei unleashed his radiation attack, trying to end the fight quickly. At that moment, a woman was observing everything from afar. She noticed how suddenly the area had gone silent and felt something was off. She knew that warriors from the great cities were far stronger than those from small ones. She had heard that Yan and Ouyang from Modu City, Lan Yusi from Chengdu, and Xin Chen from Liuli Island had begun hunting the masked figures. Suddenly, a powerful explosion rocked the region. The woman wondered if an electromagnetic cannon was being used. Near the explosion, Yan asked Ouyang Ze what he thought of the situation. Observing the nature of the attack, Ouyang replied that it didn't look like something the masked ones had done. Yan and Ouyang had already collected 4 pendants: rat, dog, monkey, and horse. They knew they had to move fast. Lan Yusi from Chengdu possessed the sheep pendant. Xin Chen from Liuli Island had at least the snake pendant. Ouyang also learned that a freshman named Liu Qingzhu had obtained the ox pendant. That confirmed it. The masked enemies were connected to the Chinese zodiac. The remaining pendants were pig, rabbit, rooster, tiger, and dragon. The dragon pendant was the most feared of all. It was said that anyone who dared face it would die. It wasn't a boss to be defeated, only escaped from. Ouyang remarked that in order to win, he and Yan would need to seize the pendants from the others. Meanwhile, Yihe explained to Chu Zhou that he had defeated the masked man with the pig mask and found a pig-shaped pendant inside it. The enemy wearing the rabbit mask had escaped during the confusion, but since his arrow had struck Yihe, they were able to track him down. Following the traces, the two arrived at an area showing signs of battle. The rabbit-masked man had been killed there. The energy marks were still warm, indicating the others couldn't be far away. Chu Zhou sensed something unusual and decided to abandon his ice techniques and use his sword instead. Then, a girl who had been hiding there realized her camouflage had been discovered. It was the freshman Lan Yusi. Xin Chen was with her and ordered her to move aside. He then activated his genetic art, transforming into his flame demon battle form, and unleashed a massive fire attack toward Yihe and Chu Zhou. Yihe remained calm and unshaken. He advanced steadily, facing two clones and wondering if it was an ambush. Lan Yusi quickly clarified that it wasn't. They had just been hiding because they were waiting for another masked person to appear. The protagonist grabbed the girl by the neck, trying to figure out what was going on. Lan Yusi grew irritated, realizing their position had been discovered. She had created the clones to mislead others. At that moment, Xin Chen released a dark smoke toward Zhou and Yihe. Even as they backed away, Lan Yusi used a giant fan to push the smoke back toward them. With that, Xin Chen set them both ablaze, thinking he had already won just by doing that. The protagonist couldn't understand why the enemies seemed to be having fun with the situation. Xin Chen was stunned when Yihe dissipated the fire cloud just by clapping his hands. Before Xin Chen could react, the protagonist punched him so hard that he was sent flying. Lan Yusi began trembling as Yihe approached. She knew that neither she nor Xin Chen excelled in close combat. They both specialized in long-range attacks. She tried to flee, but Zhou froze her feet in place. Lan Yusi grew frustrated, realizing she had focused only on the protagonist and forgotten that Zhou used ice techniques. Using the wind from her own fan, she managed to break free from the ice. However, as she jumped, the protagonist caught her foot in midair and slammed her violently against the ground. As he prepared to unleash a Xuanhuang martial technique, Lan Yusi quickly stood up and activated her clone technique, trying to confuse him. She released a wave of demonic energy toward her clones, but they all froze in place, unable to move. Yihe told her she might as well accept her fate. Realizing she was about to die, Lan Yusi surrendered and offered all her pendants. The protagonist thought everything could have been easier if she had cooperated from the start. To help him in the trial, she explained that he needed to gather all 12 pendants. Even if he didn't hunt for them himself, the others would eventually come after him. She also mentioned that Gan Zhengxiang and Ouyang Ze were the strongest ones, and she was eager to see them defeat Yihe and Chu Zhou. But the protagonist assured her that she didn't need to worry about that. Meanwhile, Ouyang and Yan were searching for others to steal their pendants. During the search, they stumbled upon Xin Chen's corpse and were shocked. He was supposed to be strong enough to handle any opponent. What had actually happened was that minutes earlier, after being sent flying by Yihe, Xin Chen had been gravely injured. He believed the protagonist was a monster and that nothing of the girl would remain. But before he could escape, a powerful creature appeared, a fearsome dragon that sliced him in half. Yan wanted to understand how Xin Chen had died like that. The wound was horrific, and Ouyang explained that only the dragon could have done it. The strike had been asymmetrical and fatal, something only the dragon was capable of. However, the dragon mask was supposed to be sealed in the underground garage. Back then, they had brought more than 20 followers to search for it in that place. Yan and Ouyang Zi had once faced the dragon, and only the two of them had survived. Even so, Yan still didn't believe the creature actually killed people. It was supposed to be just a trial, but the warm blood on the ground didn't seem fake. He also noticed that Xin Chen's pendant had disappeared. It was likely that the dragon had left the underground garage because the freshman had triggered some kind of condition, perhaps the defeat of all the masked ones. As a result, the restrictions on the final boss were lifted, and now it could move freely. Just like the Zodiac masked enemies hunted the freshmen automatically, the dragon could now actively hunt the pendants. Ouyang believed that fighting the dragon was impossible. Therefore, they needed to act before the creature reached them. The best strategy was to steal other participants' pendants and avoid being found by the dragon. With his wings, Ouyang came up with an idea. They should send out a signal, lure the pendants to that location, and fight until the end. Meanwhile, somewhere in the dead city, Liu Qingzhu was there. She was supposed to be on a train heading to Huadu University, but she had been dragged into that strange, deserted place. Alongside another survivor, she met a professor who claimed he could get one person out. However, she knew she couldn't leave at such a critical time. She felt she needed to warn the protagonist not to get involved in this. She wondered if the student who had escaped had already found him. It was a pity she didn't have the strength to look for him herself. Although the protagonist was incredibly strong, she only hoped Yihei wouldn't encounter the dragon. Suddenly, she sensed something and thought she had been discovered. In her weakened state, she couldn't run anymore. She didn't care about losing her pendant, but she had a strange feeling that Yihei would need it at some point. Ouyang eventually found Qingju. He had heard about the decline of the Liu family and noticed that she carried an ox-shaped pendant. He considered it an unexpected surprise. Perhaps she was trying to lure him into the dragon's territory, but he believed she didn't yet know that the dragon had already left the underground garage. So he decided to pursue her. After entering the ruins, Ouyang made it clear that she couldn't escape, but to his misfortune, it wasn't Liu Qingju who was there. It was the dragon itself. Ouyang was confused, thinking the dragon should have been hunting others. Then he realized something important. The dragon's targets were the pendant holders. Since he himself was carrying 4 pendants, it was obvious that the dragon would come for him. He had thought himself clever, but now he was in serious trouble because of it. The dragon rushed toward Ouyang at great speed. The young man took flight, trying to understand if it was some kind of domain ability or if the dragon truly could move like that. Suddenly, the dragon charged directly at him. Meanwhile, Yihei launched an attack against Yan, who quickly defended himself. However, Chuzhou wanted to test his own strength and asked the protagonist to let him handle this one. Yan grew furious, thinking Chuzhou was being arrogant for believing he could win. Without hesitation, he charged at him. Zhou activated his ice powers and easily defended himself. The battle grew intense. Chuzhou fused with his sword, fighting as though man and blade were one. With a powerful movement, he created a massive energy dragon. Yan, on the other hand, unleashed a brute force comparable to a giant tiger. Yihei merely watched their fight. Then Yan realized his companion was in danger. He sensed Ouyang calling for help. He warned Chuzhou that if he weren't in such a hurry, he would break all his bones. Unfortunately for Yan, Yihei had no intention of letting him leave. He struck with such power that the burly man was sent flying through the air, his lion-like mane scattering around. Injured and dazed, Yan wondered if he had just been thrown by a demonic beast. The protagonist started mocking him, which made Yan even angrier. He thought Yihei was far too arrogant and swore he would kill him for that. 3 minutes later, Yan's face was swollen and deformed from the blows. Yihei told him not to feel too bad. Lasting 3 minutes against him was already an achievement. Besides, he reminded him that Xin Chen had been defeated with a single punch. The protagonist examined the Lion Man's weapon and noticed its weight felt pleasant. He thought about borrowing it, but also felt that something was missing in that sword. So, he decided to make some improvements to it. At that moment, Chuzhou informed him that he hadn't found an ordinary pendant inside the spatial ring. Instead, it was one that kept flashing as if it were sending out a signal. That pendant belonged to Ouyang. Inside the domain, little was left of Ouyang. His body had been destroyed, leaving only fragments behind. No one could have imagined he would make it that far. He had done everything he could and believed that if he had managed to strike the dragon's heart, he might have sealed its martial chi and stopped the energy flow. Even after losing an arm, he couldn't drive the nail into the creature's heart. He was just 3 fingers away from achieving it. That had been his only chance to defeat the most powerful enemy he had ever faced. And there, he lost his life. Meanwhile, Qingju was climbing the stairs, praying that Ouyang could hold on just a few seconds longer. She was almost at the rooftop. The dragon was incredibly strong, and the ox that accompanied it was on an entirely different level. Ouyang wouldn't last much longer, and she knew she would be the next victim. To survive, she believed her only hope was Yihei. She planned to fire a signal flare, since that was the tallest building in the area, hoping the protagonist would see it from wherever he was. She then used a special ability from her bloodline called Lesser Sparrow. After activating this power, her body weakened, and she fell to the ground. Even so, she prayed that he had seen the signal. But then, hearing a voice approach, she thought it couldn't be real. The dragon was already behind her. It had found her with terrifying speed. That was a bad sign. She considered sending another alert to Yihei, but it was already too late. The dragon was preparing to kill her right there. That's when Yihei appeared. In true hero fashion, he had come to protect the girl, as he had made a promise to her mother and intended to keep it. Without fully understanding what that creature was, he immediately tried to attack it. He quickly told Qingju that Chuzhou and his new ally were in the eastern alley and that she should head there first. He would stay behind to face the man wearing the dragon mask. The protagonist saw the dragon charging at him again within that domain. He wondered if the monster could only hide inside that space. Then, he noticed something on the dragon's chest and began to suspect that the nail might be the same one Yan had mentioned, the key to defeating the creature. When he realized the dragon moved with extreme speed, the battle began. Yihei, grew even more focused. The fight was so intense that their blows destroyed buildings as if they were slicing through flesh with sharp blades. The protagonist had no idea the dragon would be that strong and struggled greatly in the fight. After being struck down and crashing to the ground, he gathered his energy and unleashed a Kamehameha. Then, he activated his special form that made him resemble a demonic beast. In that moment, he realized he had finally found a worthy opponent in this world. He knew the dragon wouldn't be easily defeated. Despite taking multiple hits, it remained nearly unscathed. The only difference was that its mask had cracked. The battle only grew fiercer. The dragon not only became faster, but also stronger. At one point, the protagonist's blade shattered under the dragon's attack. When the creature tried to strike again, Yihei caught the blade with his teeth and immediately punched the dragon square in the jaw, causing the mask to fly off completely. But Yihei wasn't done yet. What he jokingly called his client's chiropractic session had just begun. He unleashed a barrage of punches on the dragon. He had already studied the creature's body carefully and knew throat, heart, spleen, kidneys, and groin were fatal weak points in any humanoid form. Moreover, the dragon was still suffering from the martial chi blockage caused by the bronze nail Wu Yang had managed to pierce into it. That's why Yi He's strikes were now dealing devastating damage. The dragon tried to retaliate, but Yi He knew it wouldn't give up easily. He then used his Great Tornado technique, a precious skill imbued with chi, far stronger than any wind attack Lan Yusi could muster. Even then, the protagonist didn't stop there. He activated his nuclear energy and unleashed a completely explosive punch, using a technique called Mountain Sealing Fist combined with Black Flash. The impact was so powerful that the dragon was sent hurtling from one building to another like a rag doll. Seeing the dragon unable to fight back and only taking hits, the protagonist felt a little disappointed. He had expected more of a challenge from such an opponent. He quickly advanced and delivered a precise slash to the dragon's neck, severing its head cleanly. With the dragon pendant now in hand, he believed it was time to end this game. Once everyone regrouped, Yan was in shock at what had happened. His friend had died. Qingju was furious and argued with the taxi driver for fighting against the dragon-masked man. Chuzhou believed that anyone other than Yi He would only slow things down and waste time. Deep down, Qingju agreed, as she was gravely injured and could no longer use her martial abilities. The protagonist then asked her to hand over the ox pendant. What intrigued him most was that the dragon seemed to be targeting those who carried the pendants. Yan had already realized that to pass the standard trial, the dragon pendant might not even be necessary. Suddenly, a mechanism activated, and a bolt of lightning struck from the sky. A massive eye appeared above them, and the protagonist began to fall. In a surreal twist, the Huadu train appeared in the scene, and everyone was shocked to still be alive. Soon after, they were informed that they had been pulled inside the Mirage Eye, a magical artifact capable of creating illusory landscapes like dreams. Everything they had experienced had been part of the freshman's trial, so there was no need to panic. In the end, it was announced that Yi He, Chuzhou, and Liu Qingju from Anqing City had collected all 12 zodiac pendants and achieved first place. Since Yi He had performed exceptionally well, he would receive a special reward to be given after enrollment. Though everyone was confused and still felt as if they had died, they decided to acknowledge Yi He's achievement as he stood frozen, staring at the results panel in disbelief. He had received a model draw as a reward for passing the Mirage test. When he spun the draw, he thought his luck had run out, but to his surprise, he obtained the Dracula model, which granted various special abilities. From that moment on, he would need to begin cultivating his compatibility with this new power.